Welcome to this presentation of Red Dawn by Secure Ideas. This talk is about how small groups and organizations can protect themselves on today's internet from the threats and risks and vulnerabilities that are going around. I'm Kevin Johnson, the founder and CEO of Secure Ideas. I'm also a course author and instructor, teaching everywhere from SANS and Black Hat to DerbyCon and OWASP. I'm a podcaster, co-hosting The Professional Evil Perspective with James Jardine, who will introduce himself next, and an open source project lead, running projects and creating them such as Samurai WTF, Laudanum, Mucoso, and lots of other things.
I'm James Jardine, Principal Security Consultant at Secure Ideas. I'm also a SANS instructor and author of the Dev 544 Secure Coding in .NET course. I created the Web Config Security Analyzer, not that anybody really knows what that is. I co-host multiple podcasts, the Professional Evil Perspective with Kevin, and also the Down the Rabbit Hole podcast with Rafael Los. And I also am very active on the blog scene with both my personal blog for .NET Security, and then, of course, the blog we have here at Secure Ideas.
So today, we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to start with the ThreatScape and the risks today. We're going to talk about two different categories of risks that many organizations are facing. That's the organized threats and the unorganized threats. We're then going to talk a little bit about the protections available, focusing on the idea that small organizations need to be as protected as the large organizations, yet have to work that on smaller budgets and fewer resources and things like that. And then we'll just wrap up the presentation. So I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, especially not somebody who looked up security presentations on YouTube, but there are tons of attacks and threats going on, especially according to the news, right? It's, cyber war, cyber threat, cyber this, whatever, right? And most organizations, if not under all organizations, are under some form of attack most of the time, even if they don't know or care. And I want to be clear that this is not a, oh no, the world is ending, right?
The sky is falling on us.
But the reality is that attacks are happening, and because they're happening, we need to think about them.
And we need to think about why they're happening, right? I mean, a lot of times, the small companies think, why us? Are we really a target?
Yeah.
So we really have to think about that and start understanding that everybody's a target. It's not just the big companies that are getting under attack, right? It's not the giant banks. It's not the giant industrials. It's not just SCADA, right? Everybody's SCADA these days, right? It's not just those type of systems. It's even the smaller mom and pop shops and some of those other small companies that are actually starting to get under attack.
Yeah. And I think that the questions like, why are they attacking us? We're small, or we have no sensitive data. I always find those things funny, right? Like, first off, you're right, you're small, but you got a pretty dang fast internet connection, and that smallness actually makes you attractive to attackers because while being small, you don't have the 200-person security team. And the idea of no sensitive data, if you really have no sensitive data, why do you exist as a business? I mean, at the very least, right, you're going to have your employees' information, maybe their health insurance requests,
HR information,
their addresses, stuff like that. And you're going to have credit card data, at least in transit in many cases. You're going to have your information about the company, stuff like that.
Well, and also, a lot of people don't think about this, but a lot of times, we talk in class and we talk all the time at presentations about, I don't want to spend the time attacking the big company.
Yeah.
When I can spend the time attacking a small company, because we all know that the big companies, because they're getting hit all the time, because they're constantly under attack, they spend a lot of money on security. Yeah. And small companies don't have the money to spend on security. They don't have the giant security teams that big companies have. So I, as an attacker, if I'm looking to get into a major financial institution, I'm doing my recon phase, right? Part of our methodology of testing. I'm doing the recon phase to find out, well, who does business with you? And what small companies have these B2B connections.
Yeah, the trusted interfaces.
Right, that I can now go and say, okay, these guys don't do as much, so I'm going to go ahead and attack them. And that's our pivot point. I want to pivot through a small company. So that's one reason we want to come in. other reasons are just because you may not have sensitive data, even though we've come up with a few good examples of good sensitive data that pretty much everybody has. You have resources. You have storage space, right?
Oh, yeah.
If I want to store my malware or, anything else, the files I want to share with everybody, or store it on your system, right? If I want processing, right? I want to crack passwords. We're seeing all the time in the news, right?
Yeah.
It's like a club. Everybody wants to join the I've had my passwords hacked club. And, some of them are hashed, some of them are not, right? But we need something to crack we need resources to do a lot of this stuff. And so there's a lot more to it. It's the same thing I tell people with your home.
Yeah.
Right? Even though you don't think nothing sensitive is at your home, you have computing resources, you have storage. There's stuff there that somebody wants.
Yeah. And one of the things that we've seen previously, our careers of incident response and stuff like that, is when a small organization gets nailed, so that they could pivot through it to another organization, even one that they're not related to, just to obfuscate the trail, right? Okay, I'm going to hit this system and then pivot through them, and that system's not monitoring their logs if they're logging at all, right? So the first threat, right, the organized category, and one of the main things is this idea that this is what we mostly talk about, mostly here on the news or on the websites and stuff, is this idea of an organized threat. Somebody who is actually targeting the people they're attacking. Now, maybe they're targeting the people they're attacking because they made them mad. I went into your store, I went into your office, and you were rude to me, or you didn't have the item I wanted, or I just was in a bad mood that day. Please understand, when we talk about us and we and I, we're talking about the attacker's perspective, not James and I, right? This is not a confession, right?
That's right.
Yeah. But
we have better reasons to attack.
Right, yeah.
People pay us to.
And give us permission.
And give us permission.
So this idea of an organized threat where somebody has said, this organization is who I need to go after. Be it because I'm interested in them or interested in somebody they have a relationship with, as James was describing earlier. And one of the main examples here are the hacktivist groups or the hacker groups, Anonymous, Lulzsec, or whoever you want to talk about today, right? And these groups have been around for a while. I mean, the idea of activism turning into hacktivism has been around for a while. And one of the problems that we see with things like Anonymous is, one, they're anonymous. So anybody can claim, I'm a member and I did this, whatever this happens to be, and the entire group as a whole gets associated with that, right? And we have seen many times where one group will say, we're anonymous and we did this, and then another group will say, no, we're anonymous, we don't agree with that, and they go after each other, and you see lots and lots of attacks coming out of this this veneer of activism, right? We're the good guys, we're Robin Hood, we're going against the man, whatever it is, and in a lot of cases it's just, I want to hack something.
Right. And, one of the bigger problems with these type of groups is it's so easy to get involved with them. And just because their name is anonymous, right? You feel as though, oh man, I can do this. Maybe you've thought about doing it before and you're like, this is the way to do it. Anonymous had announced a while ago, there was going to be this big, Hack USA event that they were doing. And they listed out links to all of their tools, right? You get the low ion orbit cannon, all these different things. And so, Joe down the street is like, I'm going to join this fight because I agree with the cause. And he grabs the tool, and he doesn't really know what he's doing, right? I'm going to run it.
Yep.
By the way, which is not completely anonymous.
Yeah.
Lots of people are starting to find out, right? Because these people join this stuff, and they're not who form the groups and really understand what they're doing. I'm going to run a tool, and next thing you know, the police are knocking at their door saying, hey, you ran that tool, and now we've got some legal troubles.
And I always get a kick out of the sheer number of people who have the Guy Fawkes mask as their Facebook profile picture next to their real name, their address, their email address, and all of their friends, right? But they're anonymous. And, another organized threat, and this is one that I don't think many people think about in this way, but that is your employees and your customers, right? Your employees and your customers can hurt you. People are your biggest risk, and we've known this for years with regards to theft and disgruntled employees. And when we talk about small organizations, many of the people I've talked to, they focus on the people risk of they pulled $20 out of the cash drawer, or they took home office supplies, or whatever, and they they don't think about the fact that these users, the people that they've put on their network, trusted on their network, given them access to the business, can actually cause the biggest problems. And I want to be clear that this could be on purpose. I'm mad at my boss and I'm going to get back at him or her by doing this. Or it could be just accidental, right?
Right. I mean, we see a lot of it that's accidental. I mean, a lot of the internal breaches of data, right, is been from accidental, I accidentally shared this folder, or I didn't, I did something that wasn't on purpose, but it actually led to the breach. Or, I mean, how many sites did we go into, or applications did we go in and test where you find Tomcat, right? Tomcat's my favorite thing out there.
Yeah.
Servers that somebody put something up, it wasn't intentional. I stood up this server, I put default credentials on it, but it wasn't a malicious, I'm doing this to cause a hole in our system.
Well, it was helpful.
I needed to get something done,
yeah.
I did it, and then come to find out it wasn't implemented properly, and it actually led to the complete compromise of our...
Yeah. We worked with that one company where they had a guy who was just trying to install some software for them. It came on an ISO. Then they had to mount the ISO, remember? And the guy was like, oh, I know how to do this. And he went out to that website and he downloaded that free ISO mounter or whatever the tool was. I don't remember. It's not important now. And then he ran it, installed it as an administrator of the system, and it came with all this spyware and malware bundled, right? And he was just trying to help. He was just trying to be helpful.
He was trying to get his job done with the tools that he had available and the resources that he had available.
Which were
right. And this is very common for what we see in a small business. People wear many hats.
Yeah. Well, what about the drive-by download idea, right? You've got a user who's just browsing a website. The website got compromised and is pushing malware down or whatever. And, how many small businesses do we deal with? Run everybody as an administrator because there's a single account. It came on the machine when they bought it at Walmart, and it has administrative rights.
Well, right? And, they also run into the situation where when you think about updating their systems, who does their network work, it's probably not even somebody in-house, right? They've got somebody external, right? We've got a consultant that we deal with that when we need something, we'll call him. Yeah. Otherwise, the system must be running okay, right? Yeah. So, you don't know what's going on. You're trying to do stuff yourself. So accidental, is one of the leading causes of the type of data breaches that we're seeing. Although, obviously on purpose, is still also a very big thing out there, right? And that's why we talk a lot about user awareness training, some of these other things, because we always say the weakest link to any system is the people sitting in front of it.
So let's give an example, right? And this is one that I think ties directly to what we're talking about here, right? Anonymous got angry. They went after a whole bunch of organizations doing a denial of service, but they actually didn't go after the organizations. They went after PayPal. And they did a distributed denial of service attack. And this is where, it's a denial of service. I'm going to block access to this system. I'm not going to let you get in. But it's distributed. So instead of this one person launching the attack over and over and over again, hundreds or thousands or millions or billions or people, right? They all go after the thing at one time. And many times this is software that's been installed on multiple machines and one person is controlling it, a botnet or whatever.
That or people, right, they download the tool I mentioned earlier. They have this low orbit ion cannon, or they have a high orbit ion cannon too. But it's just simple software. Hey, you want to join our cause? Download the software. And basically we'll control it, and we'll start hitting whatever it is, and you're part of this cause.
And so they went after PayPal. They did a distributed denial of service. It took PayPal down. It affected payment processing, which meant that while PayPal was broken, PayPal was down. affected every single organization that made use of them. And a lot of people think of PayPal as, well, it's how I pay for things on eBay, right? But the reality is many small organizations use PayPal as their payment process.
Right, even for credit cards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even though you don't realize maybe that they're using PayPal behind the scenes, there are many small businesses that use that. You still put in your information on their site. It looks like it's a regular, okay, I'm paying with my Visa, but behind the scenes, that Visa is going up to PayPal for processing.
So that's one. So let's talk a little bit about unorganized. And this is really, in most small organizations, I think it's where the majority of the problems fall, right? And that is malware. And we also see that most of the controls, the ones we're going to talk about later on, try to focus here also, which makes sense because, well, they're where the majority of the problems are, so let's fix the majority of those problems with some type of protection. And the biggest unorganized threat out there today is malware. And we're talking Trojans, viruses, spyware, whatever fancy nerd term you want to use, right? Malicious software. Now, we've had malicious software forever. I still remember when I was a teenager and I got a shareware floppy diskette in the mail. Yes, I was that nerd, right?
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say punch card.
No, I'm not that old, but okay. And I got it from this shareware author, and I paid for it, and it was so cool, it was exciting, and I put it in my computer, and I found out later that this guy had a virus on his machine, and when he duplicated the disks, he sent it to us, right? And so my brother and I had our computer we'd saved our pennies for or whatever, and now we're getting disks bad and having trouble with this malware that's been there. So it's been around forever, right? Excuse me.
Right. I mean, we see this, and the thing about it is it's not necessarily and usually targeted at specific people, right? I mean, we can target, right? I mean, we do spear phishing attacks. I mean, there are reasons why we'll try to send malware to specific people, right? And that's part more of the organized side, right? Malware was used during the organized side. But in general, your users may just happen to be surfing out and doing something on the web. Bam, they get hit with malware, or they get hit with some virus or Trojan. They didn't even realize it. Maybe they're checking their Facebook if you allow it at work, right? And they get hit by something, and it wasn't really meant for them. The goal was just, hey, I'm trying to build up my command and control botnet and just trying to spread this information around. So usually it's not targeted, although with a lot of the malware, we're starting to see a little bit more targeting. Writers are starting to get a little bit more skeptical about who they're going to try to target with their malware. It used to be always, hey, I'm just going to throw it out there and hope that everybody gets it, right? And as everything, it evolves. The process of malware is evolving where we're making it a little bit more specific to try to make it more effective.
And when we look at malware, we see lots of different issues, right? We've seen them where they'll destroy data, right? We see where they steal credentials, or like Zeus, where they'll actually log into your bank account and transfer money out of your business bank account, which, let me just be blunt, that sucks, right? And there are tons of problems like this. We've also seen malware that will encrypt the hard drive, and preventing you, the owner of that computer and the owner of that data, from accessing it, and then they demand a ransom, right?
Right.
Like, hey, send us $50 or $100 or whatever, and we'll unlock it.
Right, what they call the ransomware, right? Or the scareware, right? The malware that installs, and then out of nowhere, all of a sudden it's saying, your computer's infected with 50,000 registry problems and viruses, and contact us and pay this money and we'll remove all these things. Right. And really, you pay the money and they just end up installing more viruses on your system. Right, but, there's all kinds of techniques that they're using, but it's not really targeted at a specific item, right? It's just kind of out there for everybody.
So like this example, right? Point of sale malware. Malware that actually targets the credit card data on a point of sale system. And the idea behind these are, let's attack a whole bunch of people. We're going to attack as many people as use that point of sale system as possible, and we're going to grab a small amount. We're going to grab $50 or $75 from 1,000 people. Much more effective, much more likely to fall under that radar of fraud detection than to steal $1,000 from 75 people, right? we've got more money coming in, or the same amount of money coming in, but we don't trigger things.
Right.
So we get it. So we see, the malware coming out and spreading and targeting these systems, especially since, as we'll talk about in a second, a lot of point-of-sale systems aren't really running the anti-malware or the protections that we need.
Right. It kind of reminds me of the Office Space, idea.
The salami attack.
That, where it's like, oh, well, we're just rounding the last cent, so we can just take that last hundredth of a cent and we'll dump it into account, right? So if we spread that over 1 million accounts, it'll actually add up to something. Right? We're flying under that radar that, okay, $75 won't trigger a problem, so let's just do that. Somebody won't notice it.
Yep.
Even if they do, it won't really raise the red flags for the credit card company or whoever, because, oh yeah, it was a $75 charge. Okay, we'll wipe it off. I don't know what happened. But they're not correlating the fact that it was 5,000 $75 charges versus one, $200,000 charge.
And because it's malware and it's running on multiple point-of-sale systems, it's not one store that 5,000 people got $75 taken from them. It's 100 stores or 200 stores, and it starts being harder to track things down. So let's talk about how we can protect against this. How can we fix the problem? And I want to be very clear, right? There's tons of protections available, at least if you talk to the salespeople. I was at an event today, and the vendor show was going on at the event I was at. And I just walked around a little bit, and I saw every single person there had something that was going to solve the day, right? Here's the problem, we're going to fix it. But the reality is, the costs of most of these protections that we're about to discuss for small businesses are really little, right? Or even non-existent because they've already got them. They already came with the system or what have you.
Right. We don't have to go out and buy, super sophisticated systems.
Right.
We've had conversations before about, do I have to go out and get the high and glossy system, or will the average system work? Even in those situations, do I have to buy the best of breed? Where's my price point? For being a small company, obviously we still have to manage cost versus risk.
Yep.
And figure that out, right? It doesn't make sense for me to spend a huge amount for something that's way more than what I actually need for my system.
And what I always say to people, and I think you say the same thing, is that our job is not to make the system 100% secure, because we're going to fail at that.
I said that just today.
Yeah. Our job is to raise the bar, right? You must be this tall to ride the internet ride, and raise the bar so the attacker has to work at it to get in, right?
I want to raise the bar high enough that when I get breached, I'm not mad at the attacker. I want to shake his hand.
Yeah.
Or her.
Wow.
Right,
they accomplished it.
You deserve what you just got for the amount of work that you just put in.
Of course, then I'm going to react and try to isolate it and all that kind of stuff. Right, we're not saying, oh yeah, shake it and throw a party. But, right, we want
You win! Here's your t-shirt. No,
you get a t-shirt?
Yeah.
Wow.
Right, that's not the goal of what we're talking about. But the idea is that there is no 100% secure.
Yeah, not if you want the system to be usable.
Right. You need to make sure that you're raising the bar high enough that they actually had to work, right? And the goal that they're going to hit your system and they're going to say, this is too difficult, right? Or it's not worth my time. I'll move on to the next guy.
Yeah.
And, it was funny. I was actually joking around when I was talking about this. And I was like, yeah, maybe you can even pop up a message when you start detecting attack and say, hey, we do a lot of security. Go over to Joe's shack down the street. He doesn't. Points in the other direction.
Go over there. Right? So one of the things, and look, this is something that we need on all of our systems, is some form of endpoint protection, some type of anti-malware that runs. And the main reason is in these small organizations when we're talking about client machines and doing this, these endpoints on the network are what are being attacked. Right, the users have access to them, and if they become disgruntled, they're going to go after them. The malware is going after those endpoints. And so what we want to see is some form of anti-malware. And some of it could be expensive, some of it could be free, right? Heck, Microsoft has their Security Essentials, which is a free antivirus that if you're running Windows, it's there. You can install this.
It goes directly to our point with the idea that there is no 100% secure, right? I mean, we're sitting here saying, look, run anti-malware, run antivirus, right? And there's plenty of people out there that are probably thinking, well, you can bypass antivirus.
Of course.
Right? Which is 100% accurate, right? It can be bypassed in certain situations under the certain conditions. However, it's still the goal of I'm raising that bar.
Yeah.
I'm putting antivirus on there. I'm keeping it updated.
Well,
right?
that's important, right? Don't just install it.
Don't just install it.
We're good.
Right? Keep your signatures updated. Keep everything active. You are making it more difficult. I don't care what the salespeople say that try to sell you the fancy systems. Yeah. You are keeping it more secure than you were without running anything at all, even though people may say, oh, well, that's bypassable. Everything out there, we can come up with a reason for it being bypassable.
And one of the things is, you need to make sure that you have this on all of your machines, right? Even your specialized systems should have antivirus if you can do it. Now, I want to point out that in some cases, the vendor of that specialized system won't support it if you've installed software like this. And if they won't, then you need to go kick them in the knee, right? Because they need to understand that your business is what's being attacked. And if their system is what's bringing that in or allowing that in, we have issues. So that's the one first protection, right? Let's protect the endpoints. Let's put anti-malware on there. Let's deal with that. And then let's start looking at some form of segmentation, right? And we talk about firewalls, right? And when we look at large organizations or medium-sized organizations, they know that. They've got firewalls. And they segment their network. When we talk about small organizations, in a lot of cases they think, oh, we got that Belkin router from Target, and it's good enough because it protects us from the internet. And you know what? They're right. That is a firewall, and it's doing some form of protection. But what we're talking about is, let's look at the network and segment what it does. So, for example, I see a lot of times in little franchise restaurants where you walk in and they've got a cash register and a machine in the back that's the manager's machine, and they've got a server that does their payment processing and their business processing and stuff like that. Maybe the franchisor can connect into that to pull reports and stuff. And all three of those systems are running on the exact same network. There's nothing preventing them from talking to each other. So the manager's machine, which every single person that works in that restaurant can sit down in front of and surf Facebook or Twitter or what have you, gets infected, that malware has full access to the other two machines on that network. So let's segment it. And we could do a hardware firewall, right? You could actually build segmented networks with firewalls and
physical devices.
Hardware. Or, you know what? Windows machines, Linux machines, and Macs all have built-in software firewalls. Turn it on. Let's block access to things. Again, let's raise the bar. We're not making it perfect. We're just raising up the difficulty for that attacker coming after us.
Right. It's one of those, we always talk about levels of security and layers of security. And this just speaks to that of it's not that difficult to add some of these layers. Yeah. And they make a big impact, right? Because a lot of this stuff, the example we just talked about, you happen to be the attacker on the wireless network, right? Segmentation at that point, okay, I can't see anything else. Yep. Right? How long am I going to really try to sit there and see, can I get past this? Now, if that company happens to be your true target,
then you're going to spend time.
Right, but you're going to be a dedicated attacker trying to attack you personally, or you specifically, is going to take the time either way.
Yep.
Right, but it's all about taking the person, really it's keeping the honest people honest.
Yeah.
The people that are thinking, I should try this. And they don't, right? They turn away. The script kiddies that really don't know how to do some of this stuff, they just, I can run a couple tools. The tool didn't show anything because we did good segmentation.
Yep, I'm going to move on.
I'll move on, no big deal. I just wanted to check it out.
Yep. So that's one thing. Another thing you do is, you know what? You can go get services, right? You can fix this stuff. Or you can do it yourself. right? Like, for example, it doesn't cost much for somebody to go out and buy a Nessus scanner and, pay the licensing fee for that and scan themselves if they want to. And we're not going to try to convince you that that's a bad idea. We'll point out that you need to know how to do it. The people who run Nessus, write Nessus, Tenable software, they'll explain it. And they'll sell you that. And that works well. Or you could use a service. You can pay somebody to do it. And there are a number of them out there. Now, of course, James and I are partial to a specific one. I'm not sure why. And, right? Maybe we run it. But those are options. And the idea is, while you have these protections, while you can set them up and you can do this stuff, one part of it that we really haven't discussed a lot is you have to verify that it's working. And we're not talking do full-blown penetration tests and have, James and I and our other consultants come in and just hack you like crazy. It's not what you need. What you need is a simple way to say, is it running? Is it working? Can we see any vulnerabilities? Or do we have any exposures still? And you can do one or the other, or do both, right? Work together.
Well, and, quite honestly, you have to be realistic about maturity levels within your security program as well. A lot of times we see people that they don't really think about that, right? We're talking picking low-hanging fruit, quite honestly. I mean, This is simple stuff where we're saying, hey, this is a starting place. Is this everything that a small company should be doing? No. But this is the starting place to say, hey, if you're not doing anything at all, here's some stuff that you can start implementing. And when you start thinking about the ways that we can do this, right, whether you're going to scan yourself or whether you want to have a service do it, you really have to start looking at your organization, what your skills are in-house, and what best fits you. Right. There are organizations out there that are perfectly fine to scan themselves, go get the tools, run the stuff, and that is the ideal situation for them. Where there's many organizations, right, that's quite the opposite, right? We don't have anybody in-house. We don't know how to do this stuff. And cost-effective, skill-effective, all that stuff works out much better if we go to subscribe to a service. And quite honestly, I mean, we are very much in the idea of we want you to have what works best for you.
Well, like for an example that I've talked to some other people about doing for them, and this kind of thing works is maybe you're too small to do something like this, but you also know you need to do it. So work with a local business group. Work with people in your same industry or people in your same street, right? And pair up and say, hey, why don't we work on this together and work with combined resources to do that kind of stuff. We see a lot of benefit from those type of things. So, in conclusion, no organization is safe. Now, I want to be very clear because fear, uncertainty, and doubt, that whole idea of, I'm going to scare you into buying something, that's not what we're trying to do here, right? We're just trying to say, pay attention to what your actual risks are, what the actual threats of targeting you are, right?
That's our, it's always our concern. I start talking to people about what I do for a living. I talk about, how easy it is to do a bunch of the stuff that we do when we test, that we're looking for from a security perspective. And I always follow it up with, now, I don't want you to go home and be afraid to use the internet.
Right.
Because, I bank online, I do all this stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And I know what it's like on the internet. But that's not how it's supposed to be, right? I mean, we know that there's issues out there. Really, it's about just raising awareness. And if I'm doing it properly, and if I'm taking the precautions, right? I've got my antivirus, I'm segmenting properly. I'm aware, about phishing emails and how social engineering works, and I'm vigilant about this, then I'm decreasing my odds of getting attacked.
Yep.
I can't reduce them to zero unless I just, hold myself up in a cave someplace and disconnect myself from the world.
Would you really want to live in a cave someplace?
No, I
couldn't
think so.
charge my iPad.
But you're not reducing it to zero, but you're reducing it, and that's our goal, right? We're reducing our risk, and that's what we're trying to do.
Right. So if you have any questions, please reach out to James or I or both of us, right? Come on out to our secureideas.com site, send us an email, give us a phone call. We are really here to help. So, thank you very much.